Before ChatGPT, before the iPhone, before the internet, someone had to write the very first line of code. This is that story. ACT won the beginning, 1840s, 1950s. It all starts with a woman named Ada Lovelace. In 1843, she wrote what we now call the first algorithm instructions for a machine that didn't even exist yet. She wasn't just thinking about calculation. She imagined a machine that could create music, art, and solve problems beyond pure math, a century ahead of her time. Then came Alan Turing. In 1936, he asked a question that would define the next 100 years. Can machines think? He designed a theoretical machine that could read and write symbols on a tape, and in doing so, laid the foundation for every computer ever built. World War II accelerated everything. The Allies needed to break Nazi encryption codes. This urgency gave birth to Colossus, the first programmable electronic computer. And in 1945, ENIAC arrived. 30 tons of metal, 18,000 vacuum tubes, filling an entire room just to do math faster than a human. And yes, in 1947, engineer Grace Hopper found a literal moth stuck inside a Harvard computer. She taped it into her notebook and wrote, "First actual bug found." That word has been with us ever since. ACT2 software is born 1950s, 1980s. Hardware existed, but what did you run on it? At first, programmers wrote in machine code raw ones and zeros. Then assembly language arrived, letting humans speak to machines in something closer to words. Then came Fortran in 1957, the first high-level language built for scientists. Then COBOL in 1959, built for business. Grace Hopper again. COBOL still runs inside banks today. In 1969, Bell Labs created Unix. Small, elegant, modular, its philosophy, do one thing and do it well. In 1972, Dennis Ritchie built the C programming language on top of Unix. C became the foundation of almost every operating system you've ever used. Then the personal computer changed everything. A young Bill Gates licensed an operating system to IBM. Steve Jobs showed the world a computer with a mouse and icons, the Macintosh, in 1984. Software was no longer for engineers in labs. It was for everyone. ACT3, the internet changes everything, 1990s, 2000s. In 1991, Tim Berners-Lee published the first website. It was just text and links. Nobody knew it would become the infrastructure of civilization. Browsers arrived. Netscape. Internet Explorer. The web exploded. Suddenly, every company needed a website. Every idea became a startup. Investors poured billions into anything with a .com at the end. Amazon, Pets.com, Webvan, it didn't matter. Just get online. Then in 2001, the bubble burst. $5 trillion erased. Most companies vanished overnight. But the ones who survived, Amazon, Google, survived because they were building real value, not just hype. And while all this was happening, a Finnish student named Linus Torvalds had released the Linux kernel in 1991 for free. The open source movement was born. Developers around the world contributed code to shared projects. The internet ran on it.
ACT4, Mobile and Cloud, 2007 to 2020. January 9, 2007. Steve Jobs walks on stage and says, "We're going to make some history together today." He introduces a phone with no keyboard, just a screen. The iPhone. Within a year, the App Store launched. Now anyone could write software and put it in the pocket of millions of people overnight. Android followed. Mobile became the dominant computing platform on Earth. At the same time, Amazon Web Services launched. Instead of buying servers, you rented them by the hour. Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, none of them own the servers they run on. The cloud made scaling effortless. Software development itself changed. Agile. DevOps. Microservices. Docker. Kubernetes. The monolithic app died. Everything became modular, containerized, continuously deployed. GitHub became every developer's home.
Act 5, the AI Era, 2017 today. In 2017, Google researchers published a paper called "Attention is All You Need." It introduced the transformer architecture. At the time, it barely made headlines. Looking back, it changed everything. GPT-1 came in 2018. GPT-3 in 2020 shocked the world. Then ChatGPT launched in November 2022 and hit 100 million users in 60 days, faster than any product in history. GitHub Copilot started writing code alongside developers. Claude, Gemini, Llama followed. Suddenly, a non-developer could describe what they wanted in plain English and get working software back. People panicked. Is the developer dead? The answer is no, but the job is changing. Understanding systems, architecture, security, and logic matters more than ever. AI writes code. Developers decide what gets built and why.
ACT 6. What's next? The future. We are standing at the edge of something we don't fully understand yet. AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, is the goal of several major labs. Not a tool that does one thing well, but a system that can reason, adapt, and learn like a human across any domain. Nobody knows exactly when it arrives. Some say 5 years. Some say 50. Some say never. Quantum computing is coming. Not faster classical computing, fundamentally different computing. Quantum machines exploit the physics of particles to solve certain problems that would take today's computers longer than the age of the universe. Cryptography, drug discovery, climate modeling, all will be transformed. By 2050, software may be invisible. You'll describe what you want, and the system builds it. The interface will be conversation. The programmer of the future won't type syntax, they'll define intent, evaluate output, and take responsibility for what gets built. But here's what hasn't changed since Ada Lovelace sat down in 1843. Someone has to imagine it first.
Outro. From a moth in a Harvard computer to an AI that writes its own code. From punch cards to language models. From one room-sized machine to software running on billions of devices simultaneously. This is the story of software. And it's not finished yet. If this video was useful, subscribe. Every week we go deep on AI, code, and where technology is actually taking us. What era of software history do you find most fascinating? Drop it in the comments. Hepsi bu kader abi. Direct kopyala yapıstır kullanabilirsin. Script I kısaltmamı de bolam voiceover formatına severmemi istersen soil.
The story of software, from zero to AI. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're doing something a little different. No code, no tutorials. Just a story. And honestly it might be the most important video I put out so far. Because before we talk about React, before we talk about AI, before we talk about any of that, I think we need to zoom out. Way out. And ask, how did we even get here? Like, how did we go from zero, literally nothing, to a world where you can open your phone, type a sentence, and have an AI write you a working app in seconds? That's what this video is about. Let's get into it. So it all starts way earlier than you'd think. We're talking 1843. There's this woman, Ada Lovelace, and she writes what is now considered the first algorithm in history. And here's the wild part: the machine she was writing it for didn't even exist yet. It was just a concept. She was essentially programming a computer 100 years before computers were a thing. And she wasn't just thinking about math. She wrote that this machine could one day compose music, create graphics, solve all kinds of problems. In 1843. That's insane when you think about it. Then you've got Alan Turing in the 1930s asking one of the most important questions ever: can machines think? He designed this theoretical machine that could read symbols and write symbols and follow rules, and that idea became the blueprint for every computer ever built. World War II then came along and basically force accelerated everything. The Allies needed to crack Nazi codes fast, and that pressure gave birth to some of the first real electronic computers. And then in 1945 ENIAC, the first general-purpose computer. 30 tons. 18,000 vacuum tubes. Took up an entire room. And it existed just to do math faster than a human could. Oh, and one more thing from this era that I love. In 1947, an engineer named Grace Hopper found an actual moth, a real insect, stuck inside a Harvard computer, causing a malfunction. She taped it into her notebook and wrote "first actual bug found." And that's where the word bug in programming comes from. For real. Okay, so now we have hardware. But what do you run on it? This is where software actually begins. At first, programmers had to write in machine code. Literally ones and zeros. Can you imagine? Then came assembly language, slightly more human. Then Fortran in '57 for scientists, COBOL in '59 for business. Grace Hopper again, by the way. COBOL is still running inside banks right now as we're having this conversation. Crazy. Then 1969 Bell Labs creates Unix. And the philosophy behind Unix was simple: do one thing, and do it well. And in 1972, Dennis Ritchie builds C on top of Unix. C is basically the mother of modern programming. Almost every operating system you've ever used has C somewhere in its DNA. And then the personal computer changes the game completely. Bill Gates licenses an OS to IBM. Steve Jobs puts a mouse and icons on a screen with the Macintosh in 1984. Suddenly computers aren't just for engineers anymore. They're for everyone. Then comes the internet. And nothing is ever the same again. 1991 Tim Berners-Lee publishes the first website. It's just text and links. That's it? But the idea behind it, that any computer anywhere could connect to any other computer, that idea became everything. Browsers show up. Netscape, Internet Explorer. The web explodes. Every business needs a website. Every idea becomes a startup. Investors are throwing money at anything with a .com at the end. It doesn't matter if it makes sense, just get online. And then 2001 the bubble bursts. $5 trillion. Gone. Most of these companies just disappeared overnight. But here's the thing. The companies that survived, Amazon, Google, they survived because they were building something real. Not just riding the hype. And while all of this .com madness was happening, a Finnish student named Linus Torvalds had already released the Linux kernel in 1991 for free. Open source was born. Developers around the world started contributing code to shared projects. And quietly, without anyone really noticing, the internet started running on it. Okay. 2007, this is where everything shifts again. January 9th, Steve Jobs walks on stage and says, and I'm paraphrasing, "We're going to make some history today." And he pulls out the iPhone. No keyboard. Just a screen. And honestly, at the time, a lot of people thought it was a gimmick. No buttons, how are you going to type on that yet? We know how that turned out. App Store launches in 2008. Now anyone can write software and put it in the pocket of hundreds of millions of people overnight. Android follows. Mobile becomes the dominant computing platform on the planet. And at the same time, AWS Amazon Web Services is quietly changing how software gets built. Instead of buying servers, you just rent them by the hour. Netflix doesn't own its servers. Uber doesn't own its servers. Airbnb doesn't own its servers. They're all just renting from Amazon. The cloud made scaling basically effortless. development itself changes too. Agile, DevOps, Docker, Kubernetes. Everything becomes modular, containerized, continuously deployed. GitHub becomes every developer's home base. Software is eating the world, as Marc Andreessen famously said. And then, AI. Google researchers publish a paper called Attention is All You Need. It introduces something called the transformer architecture. At the time, most people outside of ML research didn't even notice. But looking back, that paper changed everything. GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3. Each one bigger, more capable, more surprising. And then November 2022 ChatGPT drops. 100 million users in 60 days. Fastest product adoption in history. GitHub Copilot starts writing code alongside developers. Claude, Gemini, Llama follow, and suddenly a non-developer can just describe what they want in plain English and get working software back. And I know a lot of developers got scared at this point. I get it. Is the developer dead? No. But the job is changing. Understanding systems, architecture, security, thinking in abstractions, that matters more than ever now. AI writes code. Developers decide what gets built and why. That's actually a bigger responsibility, not a smaller one. So where does all of this go? Honestly, nobody knows for sure. And I think anyone who tells you they do is lying. AGI, artificial general intelligence, is what a lot of labs are chasing. Not a tool that's great at one thing, but a system that can reason and adapt across any domain, like a human can. Some people think we're 5 years away. Some say 50. Some say it's not possible at all. The debate is genuinely open. Quantum computing is coming too. And I want to be clear, this isn't just faster computing. It's a completely different type of computing. It exploits quantum physics to solve problems that would take today's computers longer than the age of the universe. Cryptography, drug discovery, climate modeling, all of it gets transformed. And by 2050 software might be invisible. You describe what you want. The system builds it. The interface is just conversation. The programmer of the future won't spend their days typing syntax. They'll define intent, evaluate output, and take responsibility for what gets created. But here's the thing that gets me every time I think about this. None of that changes what Ada Lovelace did in 1843. Someone still has to imagine it first. Alright, that's the story. From a moth in a Harvard computer to an AI that writes its own code. From punch cards to large language models. From one room-sized machine to software running on billions of devices simultaneously. This is how we got here. And honestly, we're just getting started. If you made it this far, thank you genuinely. Hit subscribe if you want more of this kind of content. Every week we go deep on AI, software, and where all of this is actually taking us. And drop a comment, what era of software history do you find most fascinating? The early days, the .com era, the AI explosion. I actually read every single one. See you in the next one.